Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I've got another deck profile for you. This time it's INFERNOBLE FIENDSMITH. I took this to my local's ROTA premiere just because I wanted to test something new. I got the tin reprints, so I wanted to go and try out some of the Sinful Spoils reprints that they had in there and rebuild one of my favorite decks, and I ended up getting Undefeated, which was really solid. So I'm going to go over this real quick. We'll go ahead and start with the main deck. Nothing really too crazy here, just one of each of all of the standard names and then the one Gearfried. The only thing I really want to discuss is the Oliver here. I know a lot of people have been wishy-washy on cutting him. I had in the week prior that I tested this list, I cut him completely and I didn't really miss him. I decided to play him this week just because of the extra utility that comes with using him with the Fiendsmith cards and having certain plays where you equip him to Angelica and then you equip a different card to prevent the opponent from using Imperm at Angelica. But the one time that I tried that, my opponent didn't have Imperm, so it didn't really matter. So that's with all of those names. Other thing I want to mention is I thought about playing at least more than one copy of all of these cards. Didn't come up because the more I got used to playing with the INFERNOBLE FIENDSMITH Sinful Spoils combos, the more I was like, I think I'm just okay with playing the one like I always have. So especially for Gearfried, I don't think I was playing the Fiendsmith stuff yet, so I thought having an additional one to access the nib-proof lines a little earlier was nice. And then same with these. These are really good cards to open, but they're super searchable, so I never really felt like I always needed to see these cards. Usually I could see a combination of any other cards, and I would still be okay for combo. Other cards we've got here are just your standard little consistency pieces. A ROTA, 3 Heritage, our 2 mandatory equip spells, and then we're actually just running 2 Museum this time. I know that seems a little strange because the card is not hard once per turn by any means. It's searchable by this, it's searchable by Angelica. Why would you not play any more? But I wanted to stick to 40 cards, and this card, one problem I was having is even if you do need a monster to equip for the equip spell that you search, and you can just normal summon anything. I was running into a couple brick hands where my normal summon, after getting the Durandal search, I just couldn't combo from there. I was like normal summoning hand trap, or I just wasn't able to get into anything substantial, so I just cut the Museum. It's best going second, and you see this going second about as often as you would in 3 in a 5 card hand going first. So that's how the math works out for that, and I think 2 is great. You can definitely play 3, go to 41, but I wanted to stick to 40, and that's how it worked out for me. And I mentioned the Sinful Spoil stuff, so here they are. The D-Bell Star, the Poplar, the 3 Wanted, Original. Not too much to say about this. It's pretty much about as standard as it gets in any deck that plays level 1 fires. The Poplar is, of course, grabbed off the Infernal Flame Banshee, which we're still playing. And then I link this off, put a different guy in the spell trap zone, and that way I can either send that for original or I can send something else. And if I scale a knight and I have Museum up, then of course I can special the knight out because it just has to special something in my spell and trap zone. So that's some really nice synergy. It plays around Ash as well, because some people try to Ash this and they think they end your combo, but I'll have like Renaud, and then I'll have Museum to special something out, and then that's a level 5 Singer right there. These cards are all great, of course. This doesn't 1-card combo, but I still like seeing it just because it's an extender going second, just to get a body to force my opponent to do things so they don't know what I'm on. I was actually bricking on this plus Wanted a lot because I'm only playing 1. I thought about playing 2, but I just don't own 2 right now. But as soon as I went to 40, I was seeing which plus playable cards, even if I was already seeing the Wanted. That way this was a free discard, and I didn't feel too bad about having a really bad hand plus these. So that's there. And mentioned Fiendsmith, so here they are. 3 Engraver, Tract, Lurie. this is as standard as it gets. I was playing just 2 before, but I decided to bump up to 3 just so I had a higher chance to see Fiendsmith and try to get better installation lines where I'm just hard making the Caesar that I'm playing instead of going through a combo where I put 2 effect monsters on field, then do Fiendsmith stuff. This is a little safer this way. And when I did do that, I got nibbed. And because I did that safe play, I was able to continue because I wasn't committed into any of my hard INFERNOBLE lines yet. I'll talk a little more about these 2 cards specifically when I go over some cards that I didn't play. Rest of the list is just going to be Interrupt City, so 3 Ash, 3 Veiler, 3 Imperm. I went for 3 DD Crow just because my locals lineup is always a little funky and sometimes people aren't playing decks that would lose a Bistio, so I opted for Crow. It didn't come up. I was siding it out a lot, and I never saw it against the decks that it would be good against, so that's okay. Last 2 are just going to be the Called by Talents. I saw these cards about as much as I wanted to, and they were really good. I see them really often in 40 cards just because I draw so much and everything, so those were great when they resolved. Definitely play more at a higher deck count. This is 14 non-engine in 40 cards. Let's go over the extra deck. Nothing crazy for the INFERNOBLE lineup. This is all pretty standard at this point, all these 5. And I'm not really too scared of Cash Tier. I think I have enough different ways to play around Unicorn ripping certain cards that, depending on the way I play, isn't going to affect me too much. You could definitely play multiples of other names if you're scared of Cash Tier, but I don't really run into the deck that often enough to really consider building around one deck. Generics. We've got, of course, Promethean Princess, Fire deck, gonna play it. Hida is my flex spot. It didn't really come up, but this could be a bunch of different cards, and I just decided Hida would be the one that I think would come up the most. The Infernal Flame Banshee, that's part of our combo to search out Poplar. After using 2 level 4s, we link this off later. An SP Little Knights, in crazy endboard card, crazy card on the crackback, can make it well warrior locked. This is pretty much just made for this deck. And then the rest of our extra deck is actually just going to be all of our Fiends and stuff. So the Closed Heaven, the Requiem, the Necroquip Princess, and the Caesar. These are what I was playing before, and then I had 2 extra flex slots. But I decided to this week test out playing Aerial Eater and Sequence just as different lines to make the Promethean Princess. And it seems a little weird because this isn't a Fiend deck, so this in theory shouldn't come up to dump anything useful. But what that does mean is oftentimes what happens is you'll go through your Fiendsmith combo and you'll have, you just going to go through these real quick. So let's just say we have like Lurie and then 2 Engravers in the graveyard, and then I'll shuffle something back, special summon him, and I'll have Necroquip on field. This is where I could make Caesar, but if I valued the Promethean Princess or just extenders a little more, I'll go ahead and link these off for Sequence, and then Sequence we'll go ahead and go for 2 Fiends with the same attribute. But we're going to run into a problem in other decks because you always have to shuffle back an Engraver, and this has to banish 2 with the same attribute that are level 6 and higher. So in this case, we wouldn't be able to do anything if we were playing any other deck, because this would have to dump an in-engine Fiend monster like in Memento. But in this case, because this deck isn't playing Fiends, we can just resend that Engraver, link this off for Promethean Princess, and then later, after we've like popped this with Charles or something like that, then we have the 2 prerequisite Fiends to banish and bring this back, and then you can link this off for SP. That came up in one game, and I thought that was pretty solid. Again, it's just for link climbing. It's nothing crazy, so if you don't want to play that by any means, you don't have to. Now let's go ahead and go over our side deck real quick. Roland Ring, this came up a couple times because a lot of people like to side in board breakers against my deck. I had a game against Memento where they did Ultimate Slayer, which I wasn't expecting. They did, I believe it was some kind of spell that I could negate. I negated it with the first Charles. They did Prosperity for 6, which I think was a mistake because either way the card wasn't resolving. So I let that go through and get negated by Ring when I shouldn't have because they Ultimate Slayered me, which I wasn't playing around. Definitely should have done the Charles negate to play around something like a Talons or just any other board breaker I couldn't respond to because they sent Meteorologic Aggregator to shuffle back the Caesar, and then they negated the other Charles, so its spell trap negate couldn't be used. But because I had 2, the pop was still live, and I think I had Ash plus might have been Ogre or Veiler in hand, so they scooped anyway. But definitely feel like I got lucky there and could have had a little better sequencing. But yeah, these cards are great to bring into side. A lot of people love to side in board breakers because the format always varies depending on what people are siding. Some people like to side a bunch of hand traps. Some people just go all in on breakers. So just having this to shut down additional breakers is always nice. 2 Cosmic Duster. Of course, just your regular back row removal. Didn't come up, but just in case. And then we're playing 6 hand traps inside here in the Droll and Molcharme Perulia. These were okay. I don't think this ever came up when I was siding it and I drew it. But I just blame that more on variance. Could test this a little more. Perulia did draw me a couple cards against Kashtira, but I blame that more on the draws that I had than the card itself, because it did draw me, I think, around like 4 cards, which should have been really solid, but their end board was really good, and my hand was really trash, so that's why I ended up losing that game. But yeah, could play this a little more. I haven't really messed with this a whole ton since I've gotten it, just because I've been trying different lists, and this card doesn't always make it. Or when I was playing it in my Memento Fiendsmith list, I think every time this got negated or my opponent played around it by just not summoning from hand. So that was the first time this actually drew me any more than 0 cards. And then last 4 just going to be Thrust and then 2 side cards. This I think this only resolved against Hero that I drew that. And they nibbed me, and then in this case, I thrust it into Talons because they control the monster. But these were also options. This was more against Yubel and Fiendsmith, which I didn't end up, Yubel and Tenpai, which when I played Tenpai, I didn't end up seeing these, and I didn't play against Yubel. But in theory, that's what these cards are good for. And then the rest of this video, I will just talk about the cards that I didn't play, and either that or stuff you can consider or stuff that I might test in the future. So this was definitely my first order of operations, was testing this stuff out, including Dempsey. When I was just getting familiar with playing this deck again, I felt that the Dempsey was necessary for lines that I was trying, but I realized after a little bit that I could use the boxers to get into Fiendsmith stuff and get into Sinful Spoil stuff and still combo. So then every time I could make a rank 4, I wasn't really making this card, and it didn't really seem all that necessary. It comes up if you're not playing Fiendsmith and you're not playing Sinful Spoils, but because I am, because I have them, I just decided this card wasn't worth it. So he got axed, and then these are your 1-card combo, and my other list was playing 45, and it was playing these. And I think for the sake of a 1-card combo, it's okay, but I don't really, I was bricking a little too much, and I thought just having a 1-card combo for the sake of it isn't really worth it. These cards skip your battle phase, which means if you lose die roll and you have these cards in and you go second, you basically have to use your battle phase early, and you probably can't kill your opponent. You don't use these and you lose out on the great card advantage they give, or you just skip your battle phase entirely and try to use just pop removal as your way to out cards, and I'm not really a fan of that, especially against some of the decks that I'm playing against with combo, where you just want to kill them, or you want to use your big monsters as battle phase removal. Gearfried is one of my favorites, where that just outs so many different cards, and these cards, cutting them off really sucks. Speaking of cards that get rid of your battle phase, Sanct, it doesn't technically get rid of your battle phase, but it says you can only attack with fiend monsters after you activate it. And I don't really like how restrictive this card is. Technically, it is a smaller package than playing the Lurie plus the Tract, wherever this Lurie is hiding. But what I was realizing was I think the cards were worth it. The 2 over this, just because this can be used at any point. This has an activation requirement that I have to control no monsters or only light fiends. So I think playing the extra card was fine, because even if I draw Lurry, sometimes I can still combo with normal summoning Lurry, or I just ditch it off of something else and I ignore it. This is really restrictive. It basically has to be the first action I do, because I don't summon light fiends in this deck, or I have to awkwardly climb into like a closed heaven and then fire this off. I don't think it's worth it. And the fact that this makes a token instead of a light fiend matters for shuffling back names for Aerial Eater, shuffling back names for Engraver. So that's why I didn't play that. You could definitely try it out. I don't think it's terrible, but based on what I was trying out, I didn't really like it. Bradamante was something I briefly thought about. I might still try this just because it's a level 1 Fire Warrior tuner you can summon from deck. If you don't want to commit to Ricky Ardetto, or you already used his effects, so he's not in your deck anymore, and you had to banish him from hand, you had to do something else. So that's why I thought about this. And then she can be used to trigger Angelica as well, because she discards herself and then targets a monster. But the reason why I like Little Roland over her is because Little Roland is a little more variable in how he can be used. And what I mean by that is the fact that I can just use this whenever. I can have this in my hand as an interruption for Charles to use during the damage step. This can only be used on my turn. And if I use this to search out and equip, I have to use this to specifically target that monster that I want to equip. And usually the target is always going to be the Angel Ring. So if my opponent has something like Nib and I go for this, then they nib, then I lose my board. For this, I can still get nibbed, have this in graveyard, and this can just search something else. This just has to be in my graveyard during the end phase to go for the search. So I can kind of pick and choose what I have or what I want based on what I have in my hand or on my field or whatever. And also the fact that this only gets an equip spell from the deck matters, because if I draw the target, which I was drawing a couple times, then this can just get like a Durandal or an Almace, which is whatever. This can get a warrior monster, which means if I don't have Gearfried already, I'm grabbing him for next turn, and I have follow-up, or I have Rena that I shuffled back, or just anything else. So that's what I really liked about this over this. You can still test this out. I tested this out briefly post, I think, a Sold ban to try to figure out how this would work, but I wasn't a fan of it. Might try this out a little more. It comes up for Azamina stuff apparently, so I definitely still hold on to this. I'll go ahead and talk about the Dark Spellcasters here. This was in my other list I was playing. These never really came up at all. I think the utility is there, and then this was something that you can search off of Dark just because it has 1500 less defense, and people usually think when they pop this that you don't have a target, or might be DD Croach, doesn't matter. This would be an extender, can send dead cards, but it's not a warrior. It's a little weird. It's whatever. I cut this like forever ago. I tested this I think back in like February or something like that. It was okay, but it was a one of, so I wasn't searching it. It was just kind of there. It was fine. And Dark never came up, but it could in theory. If I was playing Bystials too, I can steal one of my opponent's mags and then search a dragon, which can be interruption. So it's okay. I just, when I played the other Fiendsmith cards, I didn't have the room anymore, so this had to go, and so did this. And this came up against Kashtira, but in order for me to combo off of the Anima, I also needed to be on Hida, which means I had to have cut the Aerial Eater line. So in theory, it would have come up, but I would have had to cut more cards just to make that worth it. IP was coming up for when I was playing Boxers, because when I was doing Boxers, it was the one card combo line. And then it would go into Fiendsmith stuff. But then the problem became when I was playing against Branded that I would summon this, but then I would open Fiendsmith stuff, and then I would just have 2 extra bodies sitting there, and I'd be like, I don't really know what to do with this. I can make Hida, but it wasn't really that worth it, because especially against Branded, that's never coming up. So it was just like down pointing arrows, and that could have at least been IP for an additional interruption. It didn't matter in those games because I won that match, but I think that was something worth considering. But once I cut the boxers, then that problem was never coming up ever again. So I was like, I'll just not play this for now. Phoenix, definitely something I will consider over Hida, just as a form of removal. It's a fire monster. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's okay. I played this in, I believe it was the Vanquish Soul build. The co-link stuff comes up a lot more. It came up to draw a card. It's something you can reborn off of Promethean and have it co-link to Zealantis. And then this would give you 2 co-links to pop cards with. So that was that. And then Red Resonator was something I just kind of theory crafted myself. I don't really see other people playing this in INFERNOBLE stuff for time purposes. It was something that I came up with based on what I was seeing people play in Fiendsmith U-Bell, actually, because it is a time card. And normally what they do is, I'll go and pull these up, is of course you go into sequence and then you fusion summon into the Aerial Eater, and then of course you send this. But what you might do in other decks is that you'll go for like a cross sheep. If you have like another Light Fiend Engrave, you go for Muckracker, reborn this, and then just target something, gain a bunch of life. But what I realized is, because this is a fire, I can just go and link this off for Promethean Reborn. I gain 2700, which means I actually have enough for 2 museum activations, and I'll be up by at minimum 300 life. The problem with this is I'm not really going into time as often as I hoped, and I don't really like dedicating slots to time cards. I was playing the Agave Dragon in my Memento Fiendsmith list, but I didn't really like it, and in the so many games that I played, in the 3 events that I went to, it only came up once, and it definitely could have been avoided. So I'm not really too big on playing time cards. I definitely try to just play as fast as I can, and this deck loses a bunch of life really easily. And if I go through this, I still have to have combo if I want to like prolong for time. So I would have to open like Fiendsmith line plus combo, hope I don't get interrupted enough to where I can still pass turn with like no time for my opponent, so I win in time. So yeah, you could try this out. I just theoried this on one night and I never actually committed to it, but you could try this out cutting 1 card in the side. But I like just having some real cards inside, so that's why I didn't play this. Definitely try this out in the future. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Appreciate you guys for checking out my video, subscribing. I try to get back to all the comments as soon as I can. But yeah, I appreciate it. Ask me any questions if you have any. And yeah, I'll be trying to make a little budget list in the future. The ban list definitely hampered that a little bit. And the tin reprints as well. I thought the tin cards would be a little cheaper, but that's not the case. But still, I'll try to work something out, because I know a lot of you guys don't really want to play with all the expensive Fiendsmith and Sinful Spoil cards. So I'll try to work something out. Yeah. Appreciate it again, and see you guys later.